All right, I think we're live. Let's see. All right, we're on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Let's mute Twitch. Looks like we are good. All right, let's give it a minute for people to come on in. Send a quick tweet. All right, gotta set some context. This has become quite the feature. It's taking a couple weekends to knock it out, but that's all right. All right. So, what are we trying to do again? Event time range options. So we're trying to add a doodle.com like feature to the pods. So when users can join, they can optionally add a time range that they're available. So let's say like 6 a.m. to, well, actually that already happened, like 10 to midnight tonight. And then when they hit save their time ranges, we want to add those time ranges to their members field on the pod. So we have most of this working. We have the pure component in a decent state. Now we need to hook up the smart component to the backend API. And then we need to redo a bunch of the UX here, because we're going to use a modal instead. Anyways, let's see if we have anyone on the stream yet. Not yet. I mean, it is Sunday at 8:30, so it might be a bit of a struggle to get viewers. That's all right. We'll just keep going. All right, let me see if I can remember what the heck I was doing. Let's go to source tree. So the pure component's all good. Oh, that's right. I was here. So we're editing the pod list, and then we have this on time range options changed, and we get back the pod in the new time ranges that the user selected. And we want to save this using either the update pod or actually the join pod, because yeah, it's going to be either update or join. And I think that's it. This is where we should start. So let's get into it. So it's going to be the same thing as like this. Actually, it's very similar to on pod joined. In fact, well, I'll just copy it. Yes, for now. So we set the pod as selected. If we're a pod member, then we're going to call update. Update pod. We don't have this yet. So let's comment it out and just say whatever on pod joined. And join pod now is not just going to take the ID, it's going to take the ID and the time ranges. So let's do it like this. Let's change the join pod function to take in the pod ID and the time ranges. And so join pod is being pulled in from the hooks. Pod GraphQL hooks, use pod form hooks. Smart, it's coming from the pod form. So join pod. Oh, I'm sorry, it's coming from the hooks. These. Join pod here. So we wrap it. We wrap the mutation so we can do all like the refetch logic. And so here it just takes the pod ID. We're going to change this now to whenever you have more than one function argument, you should pass in an object like this so you don't have to worry about the order or mistyping or typos. So now we're going to call join pod with, instead of the input just being the ID, I believe it takes time ranges now. So let's see if that's true. Pod mutations from the back end. So join pod input now has ID and time range options. So it's actually like this, time range options. Time range, well, let's just keep it consistent, so like this. Okay, and then we're gonna save that. And now we're gonna, oops, close this. So we want to pass it pod range options. Where was I? Here we are. I'm sorry, time range options. And I think this is just the time ranges. So actually this is just the ID. It's not pretty dumb. Yeah, I think this is right. Because let's try saving that. I'm checking the site. On time range options changed. Time ranges. So pod mutations. Time range option input. Where is that defined? Here. Time range option input. Start, end, and state. Oh, actually, you know what? I think we need to map this. This is not going to be correct. Time range options is time ranges dot map I think it's like this, time range and then state, and that's just going to return start and state. And start is going to be the time range dot start, and end is going to be the time range dot end. So here's where we're mapping like our UI component to the back end. Like that. Well, before we save this file, let me see if that's no pod found. Oh, interesting. Okay. Let's create one. Wait a minute. Wait, why does it say no pod found? What did we change? No pod found. What the heck is this music? Melody of happiness? Let's try something else. There's no pods. So create. Interesting. Wait, what the heck? Alright, we got into a bad state here with the back end. Let's reset this. I'm pretty sure this is right. I'm going to save this. And then figure out what the heck is going on with this pod here. This is the same one we've been using in the previous examples. So, oh, you know what? I think it's because we're calling set selected pod. Yeah. And so we're saying if we're a member, I know, okay, so this is because we executed this code. So, we should have just done nothing. It should be a no op. Well, let's just like, now we do have to call update pod here. Shoot. All right, well, let's do it. Well, no. Let's punt on update pod. I just want to make sure we have it working first. Let's do it like this. Let's leave it as we had it. So what is this? On pod joined. Pod. And we're going to make this false. And we're going to join the pod. So let's join the pod as another user. That'd be a better test. So let's save this. And then Well, actually, now we have to create a new pod. Hold on. Sorry, this is like, we don't actually have as many front-end tests as we have back-end tests, so you kind of have to just test it manually right now. So we're gonna create a new one. Okay. And then we're going to create a new user in a different browser. So let's go over here, and we'll do a sign up, and we'll call this user Firefox user. The username is just going to be Firefox at tpods. Okay, that should be good. So let's see if we can sign up as a new user. Okay. Hooray. We're in. See our nice little fireworks. Alright, so now we should be able to join the pod as Firefox user. Okay, so let's do that. Let's uncomment this back out. Let's comment this out for now. Time range options. So is pod member is going to be false. And so we're going to say join pod with the time range options we select. So let's user status is not active. Oh yeah, that's right. So we have to actually activate this user in the backend in the database just manually right now. So see how it says deactivated? Let's just go ahead and set that to active. There's an approval process right now while we're in beta, so we don't get spam accounts. So right now we're just doing it manually. Oh, what the hell? Oh shit. Alright, so let's see. Let me comment this out. And then create another pod that I can join. And I have to leave the page so it doesn't let's create a pod. It's a public pod, anyone can join it. Size 3. And we'll just go to the Discover page for now in Chrome. Actually, no, we don't want this being rendered, so let's select a different event. Service Mesh and Mingle. It's a good name. And then let's go back to Firefox and load that pod again as a Firefox dude. Alright, so now we want to edit our time ranges that were available for this pod before we join it. So we hit edit, we go down here, and we're going to say we're available 10 to 11. Okay, and then we're going to say save. Don't mind the UX for now. So hit save, and now it should have called, well, let's see the dev tools. Inspect element. We should have seen on the console. No, we didn't see it because I commented it out. That's why. Okay, my bad. Let's try that again. We should see the Firefox user joining this pod with these time range options. Okay. Where's all this crap? Let's clear this. So let's try that again. Edit time ranges. Where was it? 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. Boom. Then we say save. Boom. Okay, so on time changed. Good. But it's an empty array. So did we actually call join pod? Let's search GraphQL. This says, I think it's in the params. Here we go. Get event by ID. Get join pod. So we called join pod, but what did we pass it? We gave it empty time range options. Okay. Why are the time range options empty? Well, because the array here is empty. Array is always empty. Oh no, but here it's not. On time range changed, and then we gave it the state available time range start and end was 11. What does it say? 11. Yeah, 10 to 11:59. So, on time changed is correct. So it should have called join pod with this time range options. So why is it in the network tab? It's called with empty. Oh, interesting. We called join pod many times. We call it twice. No, we called it 3 times. 4 times. Interesting. Why did we call it 5 times? Oh. Time range options, start, end, and state. Okay. Okay. So we called it correctly. But then this is called many times. Oh, is it because we're re-rendering it? Yeah, see, render pod, on time change, render pod, on time change. So we're not. I think it's because we're not memoizing the pod card. This thing. Are we memoizing this? Like, this is basically calling it on every re-render, even when nothing's changing, which is not what we want. So let's go to not this, not this. Let's go to the pod card. No, we're memoizing it. We are memoizing it. So why is this being called many times? Render pod is being called on time changed. So on time changed, it's called 5 times. First time it gets called correctly. This is actually the right data. In fact, no, so if we join pod many times, it's going to change the array. So forget about this being called many times. That's actually valid. We can worry about the re-rendering later. Why is it... on time range is changed. I see. So I think we need a loading state. So when we say, see how this is not async? So where do we have a load? Like, we need to like join the pod and show a loading state while we're joining. Don't render this. I feel like that should almost be a local variable. Let's think here. Yeah, the problem is this is not async, so it's not waiting for the join pod to go through. It's so that it re-renders before the mutation finishes, and then the pod has the old time ranges, which is empty array. And so then that triggers the reflow. So this is actually a UX problem in this list. We want to have a loading state. Where am I? Firefox. So we want to have a loading state for all of these cards, right? Like when you click join, I want this to be spinning while it's doing the join pod mutation. But we can have multiple cards. Yeah, this was like a question in terms of like the UX. Like, should you be able to join multiple pods? Yeah, you should. You should be able to like join 3 pods for the event, and whatever is the first one that accepts. Whichever is the first pod that accepts. Sorry, I'm just thinking about like UX right now. The code makes sense to me, but I'm trying to think what makes the most sense for this pod card. Because this is sort of like a work in progress, as you see. So let's go back to Figma. Let's think about this some more a little bit here. By the way, do we have any viewers? Okay, we got a couple on Twitch. Very good. So let's zoom in here. Oops. So when you're on the Discover page and you're scrolling through the events, you can see the users of like the attending and interested here. Yeah, I think we need to rethink this UX a little bit. Because on the Discover page, oh, where are we? Not Discover. Yeah, we just render the users here. Let me look at the search events client-side query for a second. Because the UX for the pod card is dictated by this event card. So we grab the node, which has the location, the title, and the pod connection. And so we grab all the pods so we can get the member photos. Okay. Right? So now we actually have 3 states, right? So it's not just interested in attending, it's interested, attending, and planning attending. So planning is like in between interested and attending. It's like a 3rd state. Whereas like you're not committed, you haven't staked your reputation yet that you're going to go, but you also, it's more than just interested. You're actually like in the process of, it's right before RSVPing. It's like you're intending to RSVP as long as the times are you find a time slot that works for everyone. So it's more than interested. So if you look at the Figma, we're gonna have interested, attending, and then under here is planning. So on the card, on the pod card, we want to show, let me go back here. So we want to show this. We want to show the state, the size, and then we want to show the users right under here. And then we're going to have a view P's. So I want to keep the UX consistent with like messaging. So let's see if I can do something real quick. Let's see if I can follow Firefox. Okay. And send them a message. So I'm going to follow this user and say he's a close friend, sure. And I've requested to follow Firefox, so Firefox now needs to approve that request. Mike requested to follow you, sure, you can follow me. He's also a close friend. And I'm going to accept and follow him back because he's cool. So I successfully accepted the follow. I should have got a notification here. Firefox requested to follow you. And so I'm going to accept that. So now we have a two-way following connection between me and Firefox, so we should be able to message each other on DMs. So I'm going to come over here and write a new message to this user, Firefox user, okay. And I'm gonna say, yeah, see how you have this view piece? This is what I'm trying to get at. So on the pod card, we're gonna do something very similar. We're gonna have this array of avatars for all the users in the pod, and then there's gonna be a view piece button. But the question is, and when you click on this, it just shows you a list of all the users in the thread, right? So the question is, let's just, by the way, let's just see if this works. Hi. Hi. Ah, great, it still works. The question is, shouldn't this be right here? Let me look at the pod card again. Where was the pod card? Oh, I had it. What does this say? He has accepted your follow request. Okay, okay, great. Let's go back to the this event here. So the pod card has this view piece button. So I think sorry, I'm just doing some thinking right now. I think we're gonna render the users here, and then view piece will be on the right. Same with, and join pod will be right above it as we have it here. And then we'll also have like the host, the pod host, like the creator and their avatar here. And then also the time. So a pod could, now we add time start and time end to the pod, because it could be a subset of the event. If the event is like a 2-day festival or something, you're gonna say, oh, we're just gonna go Saturday from like 5 to 8. So, let me think. So, well, let's punt on this UX stuff. We're not gonna solve this in the stream. Let's just get the mutation working. So we're trying to join the pod. Yeah, so we got blocked here on the like this being called a bunch of times because this is not async. So we need to, when we join a pod, get the loading variable back. So here when we call join pod, here we go. What would we return? We just return, we don't return anything. This is not async? No, it is async. Refetch queries. We don't await it though. We don't await the result. That's the problem. Right? Oh, I'm sorry, no, because we have it here. Join pod data and join pod loading. Join pod loading. So this is where it gets tricky, right? Because we need to maintain a local state variable in these hooks that maps the pod ID to the loading state. Because you can be like joining multiple pods at the same time and you want to see 2 different spinners, not 1 spinner. So let's create that local state here. We don't have that right now. So what are we going to call it? We're going to call it join pod loading map. Very descriptive. Okay? And so when we join the pod, we're going to set this map Wait a minute. Pod form hooks is being imported where? In the card. No, not in the card. Okay. This is a mistake. We have 2 smart components composed. We have a pod card smart component and then we have an infinite list. This is the problem. Oh, it's a pure component though. Yeah, but we want like a pod card to be agnostic as to where it's being rendered, the smart component. Like, I don't want to mix that into this list. I put them together. I shouldn't have done that. Shoot. Let's refactor it. So let's come here. Where's the pod card smart component? Not the pure component. There is no pod card smart component. That's the problem. There's an event card smart component. Yeah, see, this is what I want to do. I want to put all the logic in one. Oh, why did I do it like that way? Well, let's fix it. Pod card, and then we're going to create a new file in here. And actually, you know what? It's going to be like a lot of the same shit as this. So let's copy everything from our list and just remove the list element. So let's remove this list. Wait. Render list. Who calls render list? Oh my gosh. Oh, now I remember why I did this. Because I'm using this like view slider thing, and it needs global knowledge of the different views. That's fine. So let's just lift the stuff we need then. So let's not do this way. Let's just take what we need from pod list, which is just this guy. Okay, and then put that not in here. And we're gonna call this pod card. And it's gonna take the pod ID. That's pretty much it. Oh, jeez. What is going on? And so we're gonna return this. You can't type today. Fingers are cold. Let's memoize it. The pod card. No, don't import it like that. Import React memo use state, and we're gonna need the use user hooks and the GraphQL API, and we're gonna need something else too. We're gonna need well, we're gonna need a lot of stuff. Let's do it like this. Let's move this over here, and let's just lift it out as needed. So is pod member on join pod, time range options changed, all this stuff. Boink. We're gonna copy this into the pod card, and then I think we need the current user stuff too. This is some refactoring I should have done before. Selected pod. Should the pod card care about what pod is currently selected? I think so. Yeah. I think that makes sense to do it that way. Okay. So we need the pods by user ID, that's fine. Current user, we need the current user. Oh, and the pod form hooks. We need that. And we need this stuff. Pod loading, just this. pod GraphQL. So this needs to go away. This needs to go away. So does this. Where else is current user being used in this file? Just in the pod card, right? Yeah, so this file doesn't need current user. It just needs to load, it just needs to call these queries, get pods by user ID and get pods by event ID. So this smart component is only in charge of rendering the pod list. On pod selected, yeah, so this can come in here. Oh, wait a minute, no. It needs to toggle the on pod selected show Ps. I don't know what that's about, hold on, let's not edit that yet. So now this is gonna take the pod card, just a pod ID equals pod item.pod.id, and it's going to manage all the other business stuff. Okay, it simplifies this quite a bit. Selected pod. Whoa, what the hell? Render Ps. Lead pod, join pod. What? Render Ps. Oh, that's right. Yeah. You see that use case that we were supporting earlier where, no, there's not in the messaging, on the pod card where you can say view Ps? It's because you can do this, right? And it'll show you all the members of the pod, just like in the messaging page, which is what we want. It's what we want, but is this a responsibility of the pod card smart component or the list smart component? I think it's a responsibility of the pod card smart component. Oh, this music is really freaking me out. $25? $25 what? So UPs. Let me see here. This is kind of loud. Viewers. Oh, on the stream? What am I, let's see. I'm trying to like figure out the separation of concerns between these two smart components. It's not very clear, right? Because this view slider thing essentially is a cross-cutting concern. So it's a cross-cutting concern. So should it be the responsibility of the smart component, the pod component, to do this logic? I think yes, but the list is the thing that's like animating, the CSS is animating this left and right. You see what I'm saying? Because if we have two cards in this list and we try to animate it, that's not going to work. It's the list that needs to animate. The list that needs to animate. So this needs to stay in here. if so, then we still need this render Ps. You know what we could do? We could just make this an export of the smart component. Because this is just basically rendering a grid of buttons and a search users list. So this is, now we're doing like composition of smart components, right? So I almost think this render Ps method belongs in the pod card. So basically we can either export the pod joined, pod member, or we can export the render Ps function. I think we should export these functions, because if you think about it, the smart component of the card shouldn't care about the rendering of the list. Like if we want to render this card in another view that's not pod list view, for whatever reason, if we want to render it, we don't want to carry around this UX of the list, which is doing this like view slider stuff, right? So, but the view slider stuff still needs these callbacks. So when you're actually in this list, you can still call join pod, or maybe we don't, or maybe we just do back. That would simplify it quite a bit, right? If we don't have the join pod here, and we make this whole experience a concern of the list, not the card. That makes more sense to me, I think. Right? Like, forget about having this button. Just delete this button. That simplifies it, right? The best code is no code, so let's just get rid of this grid item. I just talked myself into that, I think. Search users list, selected pod. So this still needs to know the selected pod. We shouldn't have deleted that. It was a premature deletion. So let's bring that back in here. Selected pod. Here we go. But wait, who calls set selected pod? Well, the selected pod should actually be a client-side global. It shouldn't live in a smart component. Same thing with like event, like we have the event card smart component. We have a selected events mutation, a client-side query. We should do the same thing with pods. So we will do that. Yeah, we will do that. Selected pod. Yeah, let's do that. Let's delete this button. And then we're going to do, this doesn't need this. Pod form hooks don't need that. Wait, why do we have event card in here? The pod list renders the event card? Oh, right. Yeah, okay. This component is being used in multiple different scenarios. It's kind of confusing. But basically, if we're on our page, then the pods tab, if this is like a profile page, then the pods tab is going to show this view, an event card. Because basically, like it's basically telling the user, like, I've created a pod for this event. Because if we just showed the pod cards, basically it's different contexts. Like in this context, you know all these pods in the list are for this specific event. But when you're on a user's profile, you don't know what event the pod is for, so you have to actually show the event card. So we'll leave that in there for now. This is correct. But this selection business, we should not have it. It should be like a global. Should we do that now, or should we punt on it? Let me think. On pod selected. Let's punt on that for now. That's we'll do that in a different. We'll do that in a different. We'll do that in a different PR. That's a separate thing. We have a separate piece of tech that we have to pay. So let's just do it like this. Let's just say, oops, const selected pod is equal to null. I'm sorry, selected. Yeah, selected pod, right? Yeah. So then I'll put it to do in here. Implement client GraphQL client mutation. Implement GraphQL client mutation. And then sorry, I'm trying to think of many things at the same time. I should just focus. Where are we rendering the pod card again? Here. So pod card, this is actually going to come from the smart components now. But before we save this, let's finish this. So the use pod form hooks is coming from. We deleted it, didn't we? Yeah. Import use pod form hooks. I think we just have to import it from the pod form. See, this is like an old way I was doing it. I don't like to do it this way anymore. I like to import it directly from the GraphQL API. So I'd rather do like use pod hooks. So in fact, this is like tech debt, right? To do use pod hooks here. Anyways, that's not a big deal for now. So we have the selected pod. To do implement. We'll do this in the next commit actually, because this is going to matter. Client mutation. You have a current user. Okay. All right. So now instead of this being item.pod, this is going to be the actual pod. So we can pass the pod or the pod ID. So the way I've been doing these like smart cards is they can just take the already loaded entity, or they can query it themselves, like get pod by ID. So it can be used in multiple scenarios. Like, see how we have event, and then it has event ID. Where do we query for the event? Get selected events. Oh, maybe this one's not doing it. No, what I just said. Pure event card. So different pod. This is not. This can't just take an ID. I think I'm doing that with the user card, though, right? All right, is it called the user card? What's the other card called? Group card. So it takes the group. Oh, interesting. Interesting. So these aren't really that smart of cards. They assume the data was already loaded by a list or whatever is rendering the card, which is fine for now. It's not as robust as I would like. But basically, it just assumes someone else is doing the loading for us. Otherwise, you just return null. This should probably just return loading spinner instead. Well, whatever. We'll return null as well here. So this actually takes the pod, not the pod ID. So if we don't have the pod, where should we put this? Right? Where do we do the render? Render here. So if not pod, well, return null. But like, I think the smart cards should not need preloaded data. You know, they should be able to do the query themselves. But that's fine. That's fine for now. So everywhere we have item.pod, we just want pod. What is with this music? Oh, it needs the event too? Why does the pod card need the event? Why does the pod card need the event? That seems like a weird thing. I forget. What? It's not using it. That's just a mistake? It's literally not using it. Okay. Weird. So, gone. Wait, let's just make sure it really is not using it. I feel like there was a reason we're passing the event. Well, I mean, if we're not referencing it in this file, then yeah, it's just not being used. That's just a bug. So get rid of that event. On pod selected. Okay, so we can implement that in a future commit. What was it called? Okay. Okay. Now I think I should be able to save this. Save this. What did I change here? Oh, timeRangeOptions. That looks good. What did I change it there? And then we want to save, let's close that. We want to save this one. So now we're importing the pod card as its own smart component, which simplifies this file quite a bit. Very good. And this actually takes the pod now, right? Not just the pod ID. Okay, now I think we're getting somewhere. Alright, what are we missing? Okay. Does it give any errors? Use pod form hooks is not exported. Oh, I thought it was. Pod form hooks. It's just a default export. Okay. Fine. Fine. I'm on the Discover page, huh? Can I go to my profile and see the pod I joined? Oh, I didn't join it. That's right. That's right. I didn't join it. Let's go to that event where I can probably do it like faster this way, right? By going here and then going to this event, copy and pasting the ID into Firefox. So, the whole reason we did this, went down that rabbit hole of a refactor, is because we want to have the pod card maintain its loading state. We didn't want the loading state to be in the list. That was a mistake. That was some tech debt we had to pay down. So we did it. Oh shit! What's going on? We have some bug in our refactor. Object is not a function. Use pod form hooks. Pod GraphQL. What? Oh, here. No. Yeah, we're trying to add this loading map. That's what that's why we went down this refactoring rabbit hole. But why is it complaining now? I don't see any errors in here. Unexpected console. What's the error? Object is not a function? What? In the pod card. In here. Object is not a function. Use pod form hooks. Selected pod. Loading. Okay. I'm not sure what's going on there. Let's take a look. So stop this script. Refresh this. Music stopped. Close that messaging stuff. Yeah, what's going on here? What is going on here? That refactor did not go as expected. Let's see what's going on here. So we're refactoring the pod list to pull out the pod card, which we just did. So there's a lot of red, very good. And this looks good to me. Look at that. We're going to refactor the hooks to include this new time range in the loading map. Honestly, this all looks good to me. I'm not really sure. So there's something going on in this pod card that doesn't like. I think it's the hooks. Let's see what the pod GraphQL is. See, this is why I don't. This is kind of a mistake implementing it in the at the component level. You see how we have the hooks in the component. These hooks are all GraphQL hooks, so it should live in the GraphQL folder. So we can do that refactor now or later, but I don't like this. So we're looking for pod GraphQL. It's not even loading. We really broke it, huh? We really broke it. All right, well that's not good. I just want to see what this is. I have a feeling pod form hooks. This returns an object which has the parameters, and then this thing which has all the GraphQL. Yeah, see, all of this should be in its own hook. This is way too much. 300 lines of hooks is not what we want to see. Why is this not loading? Oh, it's just dead. Die. Let's try again at a different tab. Kill that tab. Sometimes Chrome just dies on you. And then we're gonna go here. And we're gonna open DevTools. What is going on? Servers are running. It's not responding. Are we importing it correctly? Pod card from Smart Components pod card. Are we exporting it correctly? Export default memo. We have memo. I mean, the problem is in that Smart component, so not sure why it's not loading. Because we're just doing everything to null. Oh, you know what? It's Chrome. Let's kill this. Let's debug it in Firefox for now until we fix it. So Firefox should show us the show us this pod GraphQL, right? Create. What the heck is going on? What the heck is going on? All right, let's just do something real quick. I'm lost. why the heck is it not even rendering anything? I really broke this card. Okay, there's the two pods. But why is it... Is it this? Use pod form hooks. Hold on. Use pod form hooks. I might just do the refactor now, because I see how confusing this is to have the GraphQL hooks inside the form hooks into one big hooks mess. I wrote that while I was learning hooks, to be fair to myself. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. Pod GraphQL is not defined. Oops. Wait. Line 18. Why is it getting to this line? Oh, what the heck? What the heck is going on? Alright, this is an ugly refactor. I don't understand why it's getting to line 18. This component should just be returning, like, what the hell? Okay, why? Do you guys follow that? Why was it executing code after the return? Oh, I see. Okay, never mind. Anyways. Let's see what's wrong with this hook. Alright, so let's get rid of our filter. Pod GraphQL is a function. Use pod graph. Okay, so let's actually try using it and see what we got. The pod GraphQL. I expect a bunch of functions in here, like join pod, leave pod. Yep, create pod, delete pod, join pod. So that's exactly what I expect. Let's just move our way down. See, when I can't figure out what the problem is, you just bisect the code, right? So this is going to be pod loading. I think this should work. Well, I don't keep jumping back to Chrome. All right, that works. All right, let's just uncomment all this. I'm confused why this wasn't working before. Let's not return this. So this is fine, this is fine, this is fine, this is fine. If not pod, return null. Maybe we return loading. And then we delete this crap. Okay. Aha. Interesting. Very interesting. So it's actually this pod card. Oh shit, it's because the name, I'm so dumb. This is the pod card wrapper that we're going to remove. It was the self-referential thing. That was not a good error, by the way. That React error was not clear. Pod card wrapper from Smart. No, from Pure Components. Pod card. So, why are we wrapping this again? there was a reason. I just forgot it. Here. Remove this component when pure card is refactored. Oh yeah, it's because I didn't like the name of these props. These prop names suck. That's fine. So let's do pure pod card is the name it should be then. Yeah, usually a smart component imports the pure component and then does all the GraphQL hooks. What are we calling this? Pure pod card? Okay. Oh, but we still want to export pod card. Okay, I think that should fix it. I was just being dumb. Sorry about that. Yeah. That works. So now we should be able to get back to business. Let me reload this. Stop. Reload. That's why it was infinite. That should have been a hint. That should have been a hint to me. Okay, there are pods. Now we have two. We have the one I created and the one that the other user created. So, maybe we should commit this refactor. Let's do this. Let's do... this. Add this. I think that's it. Yeah, we're gonna do this to do in another commit. The client side pod selection. Let's look over this again. A lot of to-dos in here, man. Oh, no, it's just all about selection, I think. Oh, I didn't want to get rid of that console log. That's not needed. Set select pod, update pod. Where can I get update pod? Is it in here? Yeah, let's just pull it. Let's just, I don't like to commit stuff that's like half. Like that, update pod. So this is coming from our pod GraphQL. So we have join, delete, join, update pod loading. Is that not exported? It is. So then we're just going to do something like this. Or update pod loading. Bingo. Okay. I think that is good. Let's commit this. Let's commit this now here. And so refactor pod card smart component, or implement pod card smart component. Yeah, because we're adding a new file, so the commit should say implement, even though we're just splitting it out of the list. But that should be. So okay, that was a huge detour. I don't know if any of you followed what I just did there, but now what we're trying to do, what we originally were trying to do, was have this loading map. Where is it? So we have a join pod loading map. Oh, wait a minute. We don't need this anymore. We don't need this map. This is what we were trying to eliminate by splitting out the smart component into its own thing, right? Because now we can just use this state in the loading. So we have a selected pod, and pod loading is if we're joining, updating, or deleting the pod, then we're going to show the spinner, right? And so selected pod. I don't think we need to. If the pod is selected, that's unnecessary. We can just say this. Oh, I see. Yeah, this is unnecessary. This should have been a code smell, right? That we have 3 ands, because we were conflating the list and the smart component here. Because the list determines like what pod in the list is selected, and so we were comparing ourselves to that selected pod before we were displayed. So this is much cleaner. So there's no need to have a selected pod in here. On time range options changed. When do we want to select the pod? I guess I guess when we just have like an on click on this pod card, we can set the selected. How do we do it in event or group? Event card. Set selected. Jesus, the event has so many props. We gotta split this out. I just want to be consistent. So, select events. Who calls this? On click. So who calls on click? Yeah, so when we just click on the card, we just call select. So let's just do it like that. Let's just do the same way. On click. On click. Select pods. Pod. I think we just do it like this, right? Because this is a client-side GraphQL. I think we're doing it this way. Select events. Oh, I see. So yeah, let's just do the same thing. So select pods is going to be a client-side mutation. Mutations I like to put after all the queries. So instead of events, it's events pods. And so we're going to need use. Well, let's just comment this out for now. This is the to-do. Or let's just do it. Let's just copy this. Alright, so that's how select is going to work. Pretty simple. And this is set selected pod. No. On pod joined. We don't need this. Selection only happens in one place now. That's better. Set selected, get out of here. On click, select pods. This does not need this. So, whatever. Selection is going to happen like that. Why do we have state? We don't need state. I forget why I did that. Alright, so we have our GraphQL, use user hooks. We have our pure component. We're going to use the pod hooks eventually when we refactor that. So join, update, delete pod is coming from this card. Very good. On pod joined. On... I guess we can't delete the pod from here. Where's on pod delete? On pod. On join clicked. On delete clicked. How do we delete the pod? Oh, I guess we just leave? If we leave the pod and we are the... Yeah, that's how it works. If we leave the pod and we are the only member, then it just automatically deletes it in the back end. And that's kind of implicit though. I don't like that, but whatever. Maybe I should make a note of that. Leave pod deletes the pod. Yeah, see, if you look for delete pod, I don't think I need to leave a note. It's pretty obvious right here. On pod joined. Is pod member. So. Whoa, wait a minute. Is leave pod the same as delete pod? I don't think so. I don't think so, bro. This is dangerous. We're deleting the pod if we click leave. What if there's other users? Oh, nah, shit. That's not what I wanted. This music's pretty cool. So in the back end, I thought I did it so delete pod and leave are different. here. So leave pod input. Yeah, there's no delete pod. So, okay. I think I just called it delete, but it calls leave. That scared me. Delete pod mutation. What the hell is delete pod? What? I don't remember doing that. Delete pod mutation? Yeah, I called it delete pod. That's not good. Should be called leave pod. Why did I do that? Yeah, see, it's leave pod. Why the hell did I do that? All right, whatever. That's some more tech debt. Rename this to leave pod. Anyways, I got distracted with that. Sorry, that just freaked me out. So we don't need this like loading math thing anymore. Oh yeah, that's why I had state. I mean, that's why I had not state. All right. So let's save this. So back in here, delete pod is actually leave pod. So this should. This is where it gets really like confusing. My naming is bad. Let me remove this. Because when you join or leave, like join and leave and delete are the same button. It's just depending on the state of the situation, it calls different backend APIs. So if you're not a member, join joins. If you're joined, then leave leaves. And if you're the last, if you own the pod and you're the last user and you click leave, then it deletes the pod. That's not. I was trying to be clever. I wrote this like this was the first API I wrote like almost a year ago now. So. Okay, anyways, save this, commit that. Oh, wait a minute. We didn't actually finish the task at hand. We're trying to we're trying to get the loading stuff to work. So loading. Should we just do... hold on, I'm getting ahead of myself. So I want to, when I join this pod, click join. It says it's loading. Okay, boom. But I didn't send the right ID. So it was sort of working. Join pod. Here. I sent no input. That's why I sent no input. Why did I send no input? Join pod... this. I should have called pod.id. Oh, it's because pod is null? Yeah, why did this... befuddled. Boom. On join. No, it definitely has the pod. What's with Firefox? Why can't I expand this? There we go. Oh. It has the pod, which has the start time, end time, the pod state, the time range options. This looks right. Oh, does it have the ID? Yeah, it has the ID. So join pod is being... Oh, yo. I refactored this. This is where TypeScript is going to get so nice once we refactor it to use TypeScript. Time range options. Yeah, no, this is no time range options here. Delete pod. All right, anyways, this should work now. Should be able to join the one I created. Yeah, we got to show the owner of the pod here, like who created it. So we joined that pod. What happened? Looks like things happened. Get pods by event ID. Yeah, okay, so we joined it, and then we queried for the user and the events because those changed because the pod has been joined. Okay. So now the moment of truth. I want to edit the time ranges. So this should call. Oh, update pod has changed as well, hasn't it? Update pod. Update pod input. So join pod input, and where's update pod? Yeah, update pod takes time range options as well now. So we have to change that too. Oh shit, we're not wrapping it? We're not wrapping it? Oh, it just takes the input variables. So to add these new input variables. Yeah, this is kind of kludgy, huh? Start time. Oops, caps locks. Start time. End time. And then time range options. Those are the new. Oh shit. Wait. No, that's right. Yeah, start time, end time, time range options. Where are those coming from again? It's coming from the pod. Pod params. Yeah. So the pod has a start time, and end time, and a time range options now. Pod params is coming from default pod params. This is just all undefined. I don't even know why I was doing this, to be honest. Start time. Define start time, end time, and time range options. I guess undefined as well. Why the hell am I doing this? All right. So now we should be able to update and join the pod. How are these changed though? Who changes these? Set pod params. Yeah, see, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah. Okay. Got it. Okay, so this is, now we're at the point where we're getting somewhere, because when you create the pod or you hit edit, now you're in the edit state. So this is actually where we want to put the. Oh, I should take a break too. How long have I been coding? This is where we actually want to put the time range options, the start time and end time, right? So we can just lift the start and end time from the event, create event modal, but the time range options, we want to pull it out of the card, because this is just crazy that this is here in this card, right? And we want to, oh, that's interesting. It's sharing state. We want to pull it out of the card and put it in the modal, so that when you click on join pod and it has a state of planning, then you see the time range options here. Okay, because then we can like make this nice and make this nice and large. All right, let's see. Let me think for a minute. What happens if I do this though? What happens if I actually add a time range? So what happens if I come in here? Oh, I can't even scroll on this card. It's a bummer. Let's try adding one here. We'll say 10 to 11. I'm gonna save it. So this calls update pod, but it doesn't actually say, yeah, see, it's not actually setting the params, because we're not doing anything with it in the component here. So update pod doesn't have the time range options. So we need to do that. We need to, where's update pod? See, what I don't understand. This should be doing like update pod wrapper. This was like, is this ever working? You can't just pass an ID. Let's get this working. This is not the best way of doing it, but it works actually. See how the delete is doing it like this? Well, actually, it's more like join. Join pod. How is it different than update? You get the current user, search events. Yeah, this is different. This is very similar to this actually. If event ID, then get the event by ID. So join and then update. Update pod. Takes the pod ID. It doesn't just take time range options. It actually takes pod params. And so we could just spread like that. What is this? If event ID, then refetch the event? Event ID. Oh, okay, yeah, sure. And this is going to call update pod with the options. That's how it works. Pod params. We're exporting that here, right? So when we call set pod params, yeah, see, we're not doing that here. Well, okay, this will work for now. We're gonna refactor this whole shit anyways. So save this. We'll come back here. So now when we're updating the pod, we're calling it only here, right? Yeah. So now this is gonna take, similar to join, the pod ID, which is just the pod ID, and then also the pod params. So we can just do pod params, and then we can just shoot. I almost think we have to spread the pod and then do time range options like so. I think that's right. Let's try it. Let's try updating it. I just want to see those on the freaking pod, man. I understand all this refactoring we have to do in the UX, but I want to see it working. Boom. Save. And then save it. And then update pod. It just has the ID. Input ID. Why is that? Update pod, we gave it the update pod wrapper, which takes a pod ID and a pod params. Input. Was this not called? Huh? I'm confused. If is pod member. Oh. Wait. What is in the pod? Dating option, end time, start time, members, time range options. Oh. So. Huh. Oops. I don't think this was called. call update with my options. Good lord, I need TypeScript. Yeah, once you use TypeScript for a while, you realize like JavaScript without types is like Stockholm syndrome. Like you think it's awesome just because it's the only thing you can use, and then you can't go back once you use TypeScript. Like I'm struggling right now. Call update. So let's add that again. 10 to 11:59. Save the time range. It does call update, but the variables input ID. Why? We have the pod. We're spreading over variables input ID, spread pod params. Oh, I'm dumb because I called it pod params. So I have to call pod params here. Well, can I just do this? I don't think so. I think he's gonna complain because we have extra properties in here, like the client side fields, but I don't think it's gonna like that. So 10 to midnight, bam, there's our time range. Save it. Oh, yeah, see, invalid value, type name. Okay, so we actually can't do it. We can't cheat. We have to put the ugh. So we can't just spread over the pod. We have to say well, we can just lift it from here, huh? This is being called correctly. We can lift it from here. This is what we're trying to save. Save, go here. So let's take that. And then we're gonna do, get rid of that, get rid of that. And then we're gonna say, give me all this. And give me that. And pull it off the pod. Save it. All right. I think it will work. Will it blend? Bam. Oh shit. Oh. Alright guys. We can have time ranges on our pods now. It's a wonderful thing. It's a beautiful thing. This is probably a good stopping point. Look at that. It's almost exactly 10 o'clock. That's exciting. Shit's working. Sort of. We still have a long way to go, obviously, in terms of the UX and refactoring the code. But I understand now this feature a lot better since last weekend when we started. So, are people still watching? That's the question. Yeah, we got 5 people still watching. Very good. So guys, a little recap of what we just did. Let me commit before I get ahead of myself here. We added this update time range options here. And we refactored the calling of the update here. And we added the start and end time and time ranges to get pods by event ID and get event ID, get events by ID. Oh, we're missing some stuff. We're missing some stuff. So we added it to, hold on, let me just stop for a second. Man, we still have a bunch of to-dos in this PR. We added it to get pods by event ID and get event by ID, but there's other places where we are getting the members of a pod, other client-side queries. So let's update those. So like we went through all this because we're trying to do this right. Implement the time range selector smart component form. This is what we're trying to do. So we have the pure component. Yeah, so what we're gonna do in terms of the UX, like I said, is when you see how we have lead pod here, think this will delete it because I'm the only member and I created it. Let's try it. Leave pod, leaving pod. So it's sort of like Gmail, where it gives you 10 seconds to say it. That was an accident. Yeah, so I deleted the pod. No pod found. Oh, see, why was it querying for the pod though? That's interesting. Wonder if that was just a bug on my part. Okay. So I must have had a refetch query with a hard-coded pod ID. I'll look into that. There's a bunch of little weird UX things like that. So when you click join, the next thing we're going to do is when you click join, it's going to render this field, this pod form, and we're going to have the start time, end time, or the time range options in this form, not in the card. Yeah, man, still so much work to do. This is a big one. I mean, this is the whole like core mechanic of the site, so it makes sense that this feature is taking forever. Everything else is like cookie cutter standard stuff. I mean, you know, a newsfeed, discover, notifications, messaging, search, like creating events and groups. Like, come on, this is meat and potatoes. But this is the core innovation, really. Is the pod concept, the unit of social accountability. All right, let me just update these queries, and then we're gonna commit, and then I think we're gonna call it. How can I find all the queries that have the get pods by event ID? So I want to look for, aha, I can look for this. I can look for this string. Oh, it's just in two places? Get pods by event ID and get pods by user ID. Really? Okay. Where's it? This. So, wait. When we get the pods by the user, do we need the time range option? Start time, end time. Get pods for the user. Yeah, this is what we talked about. The next thing, an optimization that we're going to do later, before we can merge this PR, is add this planning state. So the pod itself has 3 states now. And the planning state, so we don't have to query for all the time ranges when we're asking for all the pods. We don't want to display it in the pod card. We want to display it when you're like mutating or editing or joining the pod. So that's an optimization we're going to have to do. But for now, I think it's fine to leave it in here. Public user props on the members. Get pod by ID. We don't request all user props. Oh, let's add it here too. Wait, who's calling get pod by ID? This is what the smart card, the pod card smart component should be using, but it's not. Here, get pod by ID query. Search users. What the hell? Oh, I have this like list that handles all these different types of. Yeah. So that's like when you're in the pod card and you say show me the members. That's when it calls this get pod by ID. So we actually don't need to add it there. I think that's it then. Just this get full audience. Yeah, this is just if you are editing your own pod. All right, we're good. I'm satisfied with that. Oh, we have to rerun the queries. So let's go into the Docker container because it has our environment variables. And let's say npm run gen queries to generate the persisted queries for GraphQL. So the front and the back end are tied with these queries here. See, we only allow very specific GraphQL queries to prevent malicious attacks. this is part of the same commit. Oh, actually, no, let's do it like this, just for cleaner. I like to do the queries first. So boom, boom, boom. So add time range options. No, not add. Update GraphQL queries for time range options field. Okay, so that's what we did. We added start time and end time, but who cares? Commit that. And now we can add our JavaScript. So this. So let's leave a note for ourselves so we know where to pick up next session. Close this, close this. Should we pick up on the back end? No, that's an optimization. So instead, we should pick up on the front end. So a good way to get our rhythm going, just to get the juices flowing when our brain is like in a different context, is to do a pretty simple thing. And we have a to-do. We have a to-do here. I punted on, which is this. So I want to say start here, right? And we're going to add this client-side mutation for selecting pods, and then that's going to take 5 or 10 minutes, and then we're going to get in the flow of things, and then we're going to jump into implement time range selector smart component form. That's not a good commit message. What we really want to say is refactor pod card smart component. Refactor time range selector out of pod. How do I say this? P pod card time range selector. Yeah. So refactor time range selector out of P pod card pure component. So that's what we're going to pick up. We're going to refactor this selector out of the component and put it into the form. Okay, that's the next step. So let me commit this. What does this say? Refactor pod card smart component for time range options field. Pod card smart component time range options field. All right, I'm gonna call it. We made some good progress. We're getting there little by little, and I'm thankful that you guys followed along for as long as you did. Hopefully it was semi-useful or entertaining for you. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Till then, stay safe and have fun.